Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
I need a vacation.
Right.
Okay.
Let's go. We got this.
We got this. We can do this. All right, here we go. I'm a grown-up. Hello and welcome to Last Library on the Left. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. We're a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
And today we're having another Boundaries episode where we talk about sex and literacy.
Yes. Thank you, by the way, for doing this with me because I have been internally screaming for months now because of the horse shit that is going on in our field. And
Yeah.
I was like, Jennifer, the next Boundaries we do, it has to be on sex and literacy because I can't.
Yeah, I was like, that's fine. I mean, I'm usually pretty chill with what you want to cover. Every now and again, I'm like, I need to cover this. But yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure how I wanted to approach coverage of this. And then I thought of a really fun angle and I was like, yeah, this is going to be a good episode. I guess I'll go ahead and start and I'll talk about, culturally speaking, how sex and literacy directly affected me. As I mentioned to people a lot, I was born in Canada, grew up in America, spent most of my life in America. One of the things that, even though I grew up here and I was immersed in American culture, it didn't hinder a lot of the aspects of my cultural background. While we didn't have full access to consume media in our culture, we had enough that I was exposed to like Bollywood and Caribbean culture through my grandparents and my parents and through the church. So
What church did you go to?
there's a mandir close to where we work.
Oh,
Well, where we used to work. It's about maybe 20 minutes away from the old library, and it's a small temple. And it was the only one that I knew of that catered to Caribbean Americans specifically, because there is a big difference from Caribbean Indians and East Indians from India. They will tell you straight up, I'm not a real Indian. It's a real thing. It's fine.
is it though?
It's fine because on some days I choose not to be an Indian either. Like, it's fine. I told someone, I said, depending on the day and how I'm feeling, and if you ask me what I am, I'm gonna either tell you I'm a human, I may be nice and tell you I'm Canadian and really throw you off, or I may give you the truth and tell you I'm a Caribbean American. It just depends. So yeah, I was still exposed to culture in some aspect. And a lot of my talking is from my experience with Bollywood. For those that don't know what Bollywood is, it's Hindi language cinema. They say Bollywood because it's originated in Bombay and Hollywood, there's Bollywood, there's Dollywood, there's Lollywood, which is in Pakistan. There's probably
I hadn't heard Lollywood.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. So, Hollywood has made its impact. I was exposed to Bollywood as early as the 60s, and I stopped watching around the early 2000s. And I don't consume a lot of the new stuff because I prefer the actor and musical styles of the older stuff. Now, this is why. Old school Bollywood is very reminiscent of old school Hollywood, where the sex is hinted at. They close the door, they don't really kiss. Like old school Bollywood, they don't kiss at all. And so I grew up with that, even with Hollywood stuff, right? Like most TV shows, movies, and stuff that I watched when I was younger, with the exception of the horror. I have to put that out there. With the exception of the horror, you didn't see too much stuff. And when you saw it in the horror, because I watched campy stuff, you got punished for it. So very clear messages were sent to me when I was younger. And I wrote down here, like, did that directly influence me and why I'm not a PDA person now? Because I don't like PDA in relationships. I don't really want you to touch me unless I say you can, like I'm really particular when it comes to that. And I don't know if it's the influence of Bollywood, old school Bollywood and old school Hollywood that did it. We don't know. We'll never know. I don't want to go into it.
I know that it's just because I'm aromantic. So like any of those gestures, I don't even understand them on an intellectual level. Like, why would you want to be touching someone?
See,
if it wasn't intimate.
See, and I kind of feel that way too. I'll be perfectly honest. The only physical touch I will take is like when my child hugs me. That's the only person who's even my family members. I just kind of like freeze up when they try to give me a hug. I'm just not that touchy-feely person, which maybe it's not the influence of media. It's just something personal that I just haven't explored.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like it at all. I had to give a colleague a hug today because she left, and I was practicing it in my head, like how I was going to do it, you know? Because like it's like I gotta do this. I want to do this because I want to show her that I care for her and that I'm sad that she's leaving. But like, okay, like,
but it was like a pep talk.
Yeah, I had a half a glass of a strawberry mango tango as I prepped for it because I was like, I gotta give her a hug.
I get it.
I'm just really weird with touch. Now, all of this to say that while Bollywood didn't show kissing, they did utilize sexualizing women to bring in viewers. And I wrote down there's something called an item number, an item song in Bollywood movies. And this is from Wikipedia. I'm going to read straight from it. This might make you mad. In Indian cinema, an item number or item song is a musical number inserted into a film that may or may not have any relevance to the plot. The term is commonly used within Indian films to describe a catchy, upbeat, often provocative dance sequence for a song performed in a movie. The main aim of an item number is to entertain moviegoers and to lend support to the marketability of the film by being featured in trailers. They do not add to the continuity of the plot whatsoever, which is very true. An actress, singer, or dancer often appears as an item number, and they're also known as the item girl. In more recent years, there have been item boys as well. However, women are more commonly featured than men because, you know.
It's fan service.
Yeah. In filmy Mumbai slang, the term item means a sexy woman. The classic meaning of item number refers to highly sensualized songs with racy imagery and suggestive lyrics.
Okay, you're right. I do have feelings.
Yep.
I'm not going to rant about my feelings because my feelings are coming from a space outside of the experience. They're coming from a space outside of the culture, but I
don't like it at all.
Okay. Women are not items.
No.
Just like in English, we are not objects or in Texas, property.
Yep.
It's very demeaning.
Yep.
And I hate it.
Oh, I'm not done. That was the Wikipedia read.
When you said item number, I thought you meant like in the directorial sense, you know, like the cinematography sense.
No,
but you meant like a literal object.
She is the literal object. And I was really, because I was reading a couple articles as to the difference between Bollywood and Hollywood and why there are no kissing in Bollywood. And they have very strict laws of censorship in India. So they're doing something that Texas only hopes to do, which I don't necessarily agree with. But that's why you don't see a lot of kissing in the old school movies and stuff. You see it now. And even back then, the girls in these item numbers, they were often scantily clad, showing as much skin as possible, definitely doing evocative dances. And a lot of times they're sopping wet because sometimes they're dancing in the rain. And so Yep. Now,
okay.
I got very upset because it got me back to thinking of some of my favorite Indian songs are usually these types of songs because they are very catchy. And the women are either dancing in the rain, clothes are sticking to them. They're usually a dancer in a club, and all these men are around them, hooting and hollering and throwing money at them. So, like, clearly they're one of those. Or they're a prostitute.
So they just go all in.
Yeah, it's never ever, I mean, maybe now it's changed, but I'm just going off of my experience from the late 60s to the early 2000s because Bollywood is a lot. I'm just going to say it's a lot. It's a 3-hour movie. They do have songs. The songs do move the plot forward. You just got to have a lot of time. Okay. So I don't consume a lot of Bollywood, but it just going back and reading, and you can YouTube item number and they've got like the top 100. And I'm just very upset. I went through looking and I was like, oh my God. It's just really, really sad how we treat women. And then in India, you hear of how if you're married and your husband husband dies, as a wife, you're expected to throw yourself on the funeral fire and kill yourself because you should not be able to live when he has died. Widows are often very mistreated. Men abuse women. I've seen countless cases of rape and mutilation of Indian women. So the way they treat women is horrible. And even some men now are really horrible to women who grew up in America because you're too American and like you have opinions and stuff. Like, shut up. So I was just getting really into my feelings when I was reading all this, and so that's why I took out a lot of stuff, because I was like, I was just gonna go on a whole rant, which I still did, but whatever.
It's not been that long. We're good.
Yeah, it was really upsetting because a lot of these songs I have very fond memories of, and going back and thinking about it, they really sexualize women. Because you only would do that to have the males come in and watch. That's the only reason, right? You only want to have your men come in and watch, and have them come back multiple times to watch for the sake of marketing.
Oh, that just sounds so skeevy and shady and like, no.
Yeah, it's just really, really disgusting. So that's my whole rant on Bollywood. But I say that to say that I was exposed to both types of media, and I got to witness Hollywood get bolder quicker than Bollywood. And of course, 80s, 90s horror didn't shy away from these rules. Like if you had sex, did drugs, etc., you'd be killed off. And the minute a female showed her boobs or anything, like she was dead. So, you know, I was exposed to different types of media, and what am I trying to say? I don't know that if I watched just strictly Bollywood and not consume American media, if I would feel the same way about sex and literacy. I think that I got a good mix of it, and I was able to not go extreme one way or the other. And so this whole new concept of sex and literacy and censorship, I have really strong feelings of it because growing up in an ethnic household, you don't talk about a lot of things. My family is very, I don't want to say conservative because that means a whole nother thing now, but they were conservative to the point where you just didn't talk about sex or anything considered adult. I think that's common amongst most Indian households, at least that I know of.
I think to some extent most immigrant households keep a tight lid on the things that can re-traumatize them.
Yeah.
So like strict gender roles in India could manifest in other ways, just like I didn't realize that I lost most of my family in the Holocaust until I was in college, and my bubby was like, oh yeah, by the way, no one made it out. And I was like, what?
Yeah, and it's like you just don't talk about those things. I remember one day my mom was telling me about, because like I look down on the caste system that they have in India. I think that's a crock of shit. And my mom told me that when she got married to my father, that a member of her family was like, oh, he is lower on the caste system. And I was like, what? You know someone that fell for that bullshit? You know what I mean? And my mom is chill. She didn't care. Yeah. But just that someone would believe, I was like, no, you know.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to respect you believe that nonsense? Okay. You know, it was just really weird. But like you said, immigrant households, you don't have these discussions with your parents. Now, part of it could be because they're working so hard to provide a different type of life than they were brought up in. But also, I don't know if, I think it's a generational thing. I think generationally, adults don't think that children can handle some of the tough subjects. And they'll never know if they don't talk to you about it.
Right.
You know, and not to knock my mom or my dad, because I don't want to do that, because I think that they did the best that they could. I just think that you don't realize the capability of your children's brain until you test it out, right?
Even just let them know that the option is there to talk about anything.
Yeah.
You know, instead of like, some kids have wild imaginations, right?
Yeah.
And when parents or caregivers squash that or react and they're like, what are you talking about? We're playing dinosaurs and cats. They didn't exist at the same time or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, and the kid is like, well, now they feel ridiculed, or now they feel like they can't express themselves.
Yeah.
And that can bleed into everything.
Yeah, and I don't want to knock anyone because I don't think it's done with the intent to harm or hurt.
But that's the thing about that particular behavior is that you hopefully are not doing it to harm a child, but withholding information. What is it? Like an omission is still a lie.
Yeah, which I have an example of it.
Okay.
Now we're going to get very personal, and trigger warning, I'm going to talk about my period. So when I was younger, I did not know what a period was, and I got it.
What?
I didn't know. I remember that day
Wait, are you
very
the
clearly.
oldest daughter?
I'm the oldest daughter.
Oh, shit.
And I didn't know. My dad owned a tire shop, and whenever we weren't at school, we were there. And so I remember being there and sitting and like seeing like it looked like dirt on my pants. I remember I was wearing blue pants that day, and I was like, I don't know what this is. And then I just tried to hide it, and I thought something was wrong with me. And I just, out of fear, I hid it from my parents. But my mom, I think my dad found it, and he told my mom, and they figured it out. But I think it's because, one, I was younger, and as a person with a uterus, I got it younger than your typical person with a uterus, and they didn't have the mandatory classes yet. So those would come 2 years later, you know?
Shit.
So I was really young when I got it, which my sisters were the same. And so it was just like that fear was there. And I have that fear now as a parent because I feel like my kid might get it early. I don't know. So like I'm trying to bring that subject up now so she doesn't get scared. But I was afraid. I was really afraid. And I did not want to talk to my parents about it because I just felt like I couldn't, you know?
Wow, that's really scary because it can be a really scary first
Yeah.
experience if you have no context.
Yeah, I didn't. I was just like, I didn't go to the point where like I'm dying because I have heard people like, I'm dying. I didn't get to that point. I just kept thinking like, I just need to make it home so I can clean my clothes and throw them in the trash and then I'll be fine. And it was like early in the morning. Like, what the hell was I thinking? Of course they're going to see me, right? But I remember just being really fearful. And I wish that they would have talked to me about it sooner. But, you know, it is what it is.
Well, and you know, if you started earlier than even the mandatory classes, I mean, not that I'm trying to excuse your parents or, you know, excuse a system, but maybe they weren't ready. Like, who thinks about, okay, now granted, my mom was telling me pretty early, but I guess I probably found out about it because maybe of her pads and stuff.
Yeah.
And was like, well, what is this? And like, why do you have them? Because they were just in the bathroom. And
Right.
So she like explained it to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened with Aurora. She asked me about it one day. And so I was like, well, this is what it is. Cause she's like, why do you wear diapers? And I was like,
Kids are so savage.
Yeah. I was like, well, please don't tell your friends. I mean, she really did. And here's the thing. Not only did she go, why do you wear diapers? Every now and again, she's like, oh, you left your diapers. I use the restroom upstairs. So like, I will put things on the stairs. And then when I'm going up them, I will take them up. You left your diapers on the stairs, you know? Like, shut up. And she calls me up. But I have started the conversation with her now because I don't ever want her to feel that way. But I've also started conversations with her about a lot tougher subjects too. And sometimes my mom gets mad at me, but I'm like, Mom, you know, she can handle it. And when she can't handle it, she tells me like, I don't want to talk about this. So, you know, I was like, we've got a system. I think it's going to be better for her in the long run.
Okay, so two things. One, if you don't talk about it, when they start asking about it, then if it does come early or when it does come, how else will they know where to go for supplies that they'll need? Like the nurse's office.
Yeah.
Because that's not something that they make openly public in schools because it's not something they talk about in schools. They don't want to gross out the boys and embarrass the girls.
I know. It's so crazy.
Girl, did you know I didn't know that nurses had them in the offices until high school?
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It like came early or something, or maybe someone else, and they were like, oh yeah, just go get something from the nurse's office. And I was like, I'm sorry, the what? She will let you? And they were like, yeah. I was like, what the hell? The other thing too, so like I was watching something and they were talking about some of the most disturbing pictures in history. And it was this picture of this little girl who was like 5 or 6, and she was taken to the hospital because her parents were concerned with this massive growth that had grown over this certain amount of time. And they were like, we don't know what's wrong, and da-da-da. So they take her to the hospital where she gives birth.
Oh my God.
She had a child because she had some type of hyper puberty type disorder where her body started menstruation at 5 or 6 years old. But then they never found out who the father is, which is like more proof that people will hurt a child no matter the age.
Yep.
And just because they're 5 or 6 doesn't mean that there can't be consequences like childbearing at 5 or 6.
It's crazy.
The baby was like half the size of this girl.
Oh my God. That is scary. That's something
I
I
don't know
worry
about
about
you.
on the daily.
Right? I don't know about you, but I'd have divorced the husband. I don't care because there's always somebody near you. There'd have been a lot of missing male relatives.
Yeah, I'm not quiet about the fact that if someone came after my baby and tried to hurt her, I risk going to jail. Listen, that's one thing that you're not gonna touch my baby. No way, no way. The other day, she was sleeping and she hinted that someone hurt her at school, and I woke her up to hear what she had said, and it was just a dream, but I was still upset.
I mean, because you never know.
You never know, but because she talks in her sleep, and she was just like, so and so hurt me, and I was like, oh, no, you gotta get up, you gotta get up. What did you say now? Who hurt you? I even texted my sister like, she's not going to school tomorrow unless she tells me exactly who it is that hurt her. Like, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. I'll take off work. I was so heated.
And I think that that's good parenting, though.
Yeah.
You know, because first, we don't understand dreams at all.
No.
Second, why take the risk, you know?
Yeah. Like, she had to jump through hoops to make me believe it was a dream. I was taking away toys. I was taking away experiences. I was just like, no, you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me. Like, I tried the nice way. I'm mean mom now. I was really pressed. So around the time of the period, back to what we were actually discussing.
Sorry. So many tangents.
I know. Around the time that I got my period was when I started reading outside my grade level. I was always a great reader. And so it was around this time that I would finish my work. I would do the advanced reader level books and like take the tests on them. And I'd still need things to read. And we were visiting the library very often at the time. So the library had a one shelf teen section. I got into
wow.
a little one shelf, and I read the whole shelf. And I read more teen books and did my best to get my hands on more books for adults because they cover topics that I couldn't normally talk about with my parents. Teen books in the 90s were, oh gosh, again, just so campy. I was just right there in the niche of camp. So, but they also touched on like real world things. You had relationships, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the relationships, potential career moves. You got to visit other countries. You got to do so much when you read teen books. And I was exposed to so much as a teenager just by reading. Sorry, y'all. We had a connectivity issue because I have crappy internet. And I already hit record. So, like, we're not going to lose this.
Okay. Like that last time.
That was annoying on my part. I'm still very annoyed with myself. So, like I said, books expose me to a lot of things that I normally would not have been exposed to because let's be honest, the recommended reading in school was not enough, right? Especially for us growing up, it's nowhere near as diverse as it is now for teens, even with the fighting about the books. What we had was not as diverse. We learned a lot about the same topics over and over again. For me, it was like, oh, another marginalized person going through troubles. I can relate. What else is there? So reading on my own outside of genres helped expose me to so much more. And I found a lot of authors who had a strong hold on the angst that I felt as a teen. And I can relate to them because the books that we read in school did not have a lot of that.
No, the most traumatizing thing we read was Old Yeller.
Yeah, I don't know. We had choices in school, and I always chose the romances.
See, it was like 7th or 8th grade, and we read Old Yeller in class, taking like the round robin turns. And out of everything that was on the recommended reading list or whatever that we had to read for school in my entire school occupation, Old Yeller's the only one that has scarred me to this day.
Yeah.
I would not say gender queer would scar a child in the same way.
No, I agree.
And yet they still read Old Yeller.
Fahrenheit 451 freaked me the F out. I'll admit it. It freaked me out. I just thought of someone burning a book. I was like, why? Like, I still don't get it, but that's neither here nor there. That is, but we'll talk about it later.
Right.
So, like I said, eventually I migrated to romance, and that's where a lot of shock came in for me because I learned a lot about sex through the books. Because again, the classes I took in school didn't really explain it enough for me. And I would like to just point out that I tell my mom this often. She's very lucky that I was uneducated in that part, and I didn't let my peers dictate that kind of stuff for me. I did not get my first kiss until I was in my 20s. Don't judge me, but I was that girl. I was just like, leave me alone. Let me read my books and do my geeky stuff. I have no time for the male species, you know? But I mean, like I said, even romance books, they gave me an inflated view of the male species that I would never, like, reality would never hold up to. But I was exposed to a lot that I don't think I would have necessarily been exposed to if I didn't trust in books. And I think that's why books are so essential. They allow people like myself to explore a world that I would not necessarily explore on my own.
Yeah.
And I can do it in the privacy of my own room.
Yeah.
So I will defer to you now and I will comment along.
Okay. Well, so we're going to change gears just a little bit, guys. Not by much, though, because honestly, my biggest issue currently is the state of conservatism and the attack on literacy and intellectualism. Everyone who claims to be a patriot or a freedom fighter, whatever it is, like Moms for Liberty and all that other bullshit, that they don't realize that all of the crap that they spout is almost verbatim the same bullshit that, like, I mean, Mao Zedong was like a massive anti-intellectual. Okay. When you look back in the history books and you learn about book burning and anti-intellectualism and the suppression of women's rights or the rights of other marginalized people, those people that are championing those harmful tactics are always 100% of the time the bad guys. You're never the good guy. I don't care who you are, but when you come down to it and you're like, let's ban this book because it hurts my child, you're the bad guy. You're the bad guy now, but you're especially going to be the bad guy that children will look back on and be like, damn, the fuck was their problem?
Yeah, I think that all the time. Okay, so I have a big problem with people referring to Lena Hidalgo as Dora. It bothers me on a personal level because I was always called Pocahontas growing up. And when I look at these people, I'm like, are you really that ignorant? Like, I have colleagues that say it, and I'm just like, that really shows your ignorance because you're not smart enough to argue with her or have like an actual intelligible conversation about it. You're going to resort to calling her Dora, which Dora's fabulous, by the way. So whatever.
So going through school, we learn that Nazis are bad, book burning is bad, and all those things. And then I think about it and I'm like, the people that are book banning now, they're in our age range. Maybe give 10 years or whatever, but like they're within our age range. And I'm like, this is one of those few times when, like, okay, have you ever heard those like kind of crazy theories that this is all a simulation and like or like an experiment and stuff? And I'm always like, that's ridiculous because I adhere to the philosophy of I think therefore I am. But then you find out that like not the entire population thinks, like they don't have an inner dialogue, which is what I think therefore I am means, that you have an inner dialogue. And I have to think, like, is that proof that some of us are in a simulation? Like, are these people who are like frothing at the mouth over genderqueer or Marlon Bundo or whatever, like these children's books, are they NPC? Like, are they literally just not human beings? They're just out there playing through an algorithm and cascading through, and then they like loop back because they can't, they're literally not humans. And sometimes I'll just be like, okay, you're either clinically insane or it is a simulation and you're an NPC.
I wonder the same thing. So, okay, growing up, there were problematic folks, but I am proud to say that for the most part, there are people that lived in my specific neighborhood. They would save seats for me so I could sit with them. And it was sort of so no one else would pick on me and I'd be comfortable because I was always like the only brown person, you know, the only Indian person in the school. So having that comfort, and then now growing up and seeing like the hate that they spew on Facebook, I'm like, but you saved me a seat, and like you always want to, like, you come and sit here next to me, and you know, you took care of me and you were that safe person for me. And I just like, what happened to that person from my childhood to now that they're like ban all the books and, you know, away with Muslims and, you know, just that kind of nonsense. Like
that mentality.
Yeah, because we got the same education. We were often in the same classes. So what happened from then?
Their NPC character rebooted. Like, it's just that That's the thing, like I don't actually believe that, but there's a small part of my brain that like
What
does,
if?
that's like, okay, but what if?
Yeah.
Because the lack of proof doesn't mean that it's
Yeah.
not happening.
Yeah.
But then you like start looking at some of the other things. Okay, so one of the first non-horror movies that I watched that I took to be a horror movie was Wag the Dog.
Oh, yeah. I remember you
Yes.
told me about that.
And that movie has sat with me for my entire life.
Mhm.
And I think about it frequently, very frequently these days. So you take into account certain aspects of American history just in the last 70 years.
Mhm.
So before the Clean Water Act, lead poisoning was everywhere
Mhm.
in the systems. Well, lead poisoning can lead to severe brain damage.
Mhm.
So the generations that are vitriolic over everything and have no critical thinking skills when it comes to book banning and
Mhm.
their conservatism, whatever it is, that they are part of this generation that have a high likelihood of severe brain damage because of lead poisoning in the water. You know what bill was just not renewed? The Clean Water Act. And so you have to think like politicians, although they may sound like they're dumb and crazy,
Yeah.
they're not. They have millions of dollars behind them promoting certain agendas,
Mhm.
which don't even get me started on like the whole agenda versus, oh, it's a gay agenda. And it's like, you're only saying it's a gay agenda because there's been a straight agenda enforced for decades.
Yes. And I am a product of the straight agenda because listen, I am going to sound very stupid for a minute, but there was a point in time where I was exposed to a lot of LGBTQ characters in books, and I was like, I don't want to read this. And I'm owning up to it because
Yeah.
I wanted a man-woman relationship. But then I was like, I sat with myself and I was like, Jennifer, you dumbass. Like, your whole life, this is what you've seen. And this is what people of the LGBTQ community have seen. Let them have their books. Let them have their representation, because you know exactly how fulfilled you feel when you see a brown person on a screen. You know what I mean? Like, I had to like really introspective. You freaking dumbass. Come on. You can do better. I mean, and I am woman enough to say that I told myself that because I did have to do that to myself. And I'm glad that I was able to recognize it. I feel comfortable talking about it here, because if maybe someone else is doing it based on what I say, good for you. We all need to why can't we all just live in the same world together peacefully? I don't get it. I don't know.
Well, see, and that's the other thing too that gets me, is that like you took new information and you applied it to others through empathy.
Yeah.
And that's growth as a human.
Yeah.
And yet somehow there are people who lack that. Like they're literally incapable. And it's just like, but bro, are you a lizard? Are you for like a lizard person? Okay. So let me just like rant real quick about this dumb ass sack of shit senator of ours, and wanting to ban board books and all this other gobbledygook. And now he's going after blank books and journals because, girl, I ain't even playing. He wants to ban blank books and journals because anything can be written in there. We have to protect our children from their own thoughts. And then his staffers provided their own children's journals and diaries as proof.
Oh my God.
I am living for the day in 5 or 10 years when these children become of age and sue the absolute blood, sweat, and tears out of this man. And you know what? It was actually this moment. So I'm watching this event, and the absurdity of it. My mom, my aunt bought me mini journals with like locks and keys and stuff. And I would start, but in all honesty, anything I was writing about, I was talking to my mom about anyway.
Yeah.
So I had no need for a safe space away from my caregiver to express myself, because my mom was that safe space. And so while I never understood the point of journals and blank diaries or whatever myself, because I didn't need them, the fact that you went to this man taking away the last safe space that a child could have is insane.
Yeah, because they were, I had journals. They were mostly dream journals. Okay. I wrote my dreams down because I wanted to remember them, but they were also a safe space to kind of like work out things that I didn't feel comfortable talking to people about. But never anything like, I already told you guys I didn't date in high school, so I didn't have any of those relationship conflicts. It was literally like oh, if I go down this road with Sailor Moon, I can't watch the Power Rangers. That kind of, you know what I mean? Like nonsensical stuff. But I needed to write it down. I'm still that person that I need to write things down. So to ban a blank journal is weird. My daughter has 6 or 7 right now, and they all provide a different purpose for her.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to stop giving them to
No.
her. I've seen the TikToks of making paper. If I have to make a blank book for her, I will make it.
I get it. I was even gifted, even into in my late teens, early 20s, people would gift me journals.
Yeah.
And I still have stacks of them because I didn't know what to do with them. And I feel
Yeah.
kind of bad because I have never felt so unsafe
Yeah.
with those around me that I felt that I needed to hide what I thought.
Yeah.
Or how I felt. In fact, I have a very vivid memory of when we were living in this house in Memphis, and I had gotten another journal. Maybe my aunt or somebody had sent it to me. And I was sitting there trying really hard to respect the fact that I'd been gifted something by a relative,
Right.
and started writing. But as I was writing about my day, something that had happened in school, I got so excited about telling my mom about it. I
Yeah.
abandoned it on the desk and went and told my mom instead. Like,
Yeah.
so okay. And so now we're going to get into the other things that you can see the patterns of this type of behavior that politicians or conservative groups use. So, nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything is affecting each other. That's the fascinating thing about history. It's not the dates or anything like that, is that history is always happening, and history is happening to each other. So there's book bannings going on. There's abortion repeals. There's some states that are trying to lower the legal age of consent in marriage. There's apparently a dearth of babies being born for adoption. There's just all of these things. And when it comes down to it, it's the way that the powerful control what they see to be most valuable, which is human life, but not as life, as currency. And so when you take all of these things, let me get my papers. I wrote down some things where I was like, I have to get the words right, because if I don't get the words right, I will say something. Now, granted, there's probably a ton of things I've already said in this episode that have been very offensive to people, and like, fine, fuck off, I don't actually care.
Yeah.
But I did write down some stuff so that I knew that I wouldn't go using some of the more extreme language. So when you think about low adult literacy rates, it can equal an easily manipulated populace by politicians, which is why literacy was so guarded even after the invention of the printing press. Child literacy rates are directly connected to the rise in diverse titles and tough topics because they're educating children.
Yep.
Another, I guess, platform or arena that we're seeing this in is TikTok. Book Talk has contributed, according to many resources, a jump in book sales.
Yes.
Now, is every book maybe something I would read? Not necessarily.
No.
I do pass them on as recommendations, though. I have got running lists of saved books that I was like, that's not up my alley, but you know who would like that? My reverse harem space odyssey niche reading sister.
Yep.
Would love it.
Yep.
Is it gonna be in my TBR? No.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is that TikTok is a threat to these people in power because one, it's a technology that they don't understand. Two, it's a technology that is currently in the hands of children, young adults. That means that they cannot be necessarily groomed through this. They can, don't get me wrong, do not come at me. I'm well aware that there are predators on TikTok, just like there are predators everywhere, because that's what predators do. They prey on the places where children are. But at least on my For You page, I do not see that because I am not a predator.
Yep.
So I don't see these things. In fact, I think my TikTok thinks that I'm a Black lesbian that wants to garden, which, like, I mean, I am thinking about gardening with my new house. So, like, maybe it doesn't have everything wrong, but there's still lots of facets to the reasons why there's this massive jump in book banning. And it's got to do with childhood literacy rates. It's got to do with book sales, because these books were always out there.
Yes, they were.
They were always on the shelf. And the pandemic gave parents who love letting technology raise their children, it gave them the opportunity to see what that actually is doing.
Yeah.
These couch caregivers, these backseat caregivers now feel inadequate as caregivers because they were not vigilant in their, whatever views, I guess.
I mean,
that
because
now-
everyone thinks that TikTok is a dancing app. That's what you think.
Girl, I don't
You
ever
know,
see any dances.
I rarely see them now. Maybe when I first got on it, I saw some. But if I see a dancing video, I'm like, well, how did that end up on my FYP? I don't.
Yeah. I'm more likely to get things like weird meshes of like, I got recently this one where they were like, talking about how deep to bury certain plants and permafrost and da-da-da. And like, and also when you put rare, indigenous, or endangered plants in your garden over the body that you buried, then they're less likely to dig them up because it'll be illegal. And I was like, that's why that's on my page. I thought it was because it thought I was a gardener. That's not what that is.
Yeah.
And that was how the game, How Did This Wind Up in Serena's Algorithm, was birthed when I play it with Jerry. Okay, I just have a couple other rants. So censorship is a tool that politicians use with undereducated adults and fundamental fanaticism to censor children's literature under the guise of purity or Christendom. But it reeks of predators taking power from their prey, repeating a cycle of rising youth literacy and the attempts to censor sex, race, and politics out of their literature because they are tough topics is lazy parenting and suspiciously predatory behavior by politicians. The books were always there on the shelf. They only care now that their pool of underage, undereducated, and sheltered prey is shrinking. And convincing undereducated caregivers not to talk about these things only ensures a new generation of children to prey upon. Texas has some of the lowest literacy rates in the nation and some of the highest sex trafficking. Coincidence?
No.
Nope. I can tell a legitimate massage parlor from a sex trafficking parlor a mile away.
Yep.
And I didn't realize how problematic that was until Em came to visit back in January 2020. I didn't want to send a Lyft or an Uber to pick her up at the airport. So I had Nadine drive and go pick her up. And she was like, I can get to your library by myself. And I was like, girl, it is Super Bowl weekend. You're a redhead and your pocket size. There is no way. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, look, just don't get sex trafficked. And she was like, I don't feel safe. And I was like, that's fair. So it wasn't until I was explaining to her how you can tell that I was like, that is so normalized in my upbringing because that's what they want us to think. So as far as banning books too heavy or scary for children, I have completely forgotten the specific details of some of these books. Okay, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark or In a Dark, Dark Room. I only remember the thrill of those books. I don't remember specifics because it was the thrill of the book, of making it to the end, of getting the scary bit behind you. You know what book I do remember almost word for word and I've read once? Old Yeller. And that was 25 years ago. And I could tell you exactly where it was in the book because I started to read ahead because I saw what was coming. I started to read ahead in the class and began to panic and began to think, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this experience? Because I don't want to be here. I've literally never felt that way with a book about diversity, inclusion, queer characters, horror, anything like that. I felt that with Old Yeller, and yet it is on every recommendation.
It is. We keep tons of copies of it in the library system too.
Yeah, Old Yeller and maybe one other book traumatized me to the point where never read them again, and I still would not ban them.
Exactly. That is the thing. It's that even though, I mean, y'all know how traumatized I was with some of the 31 Days books.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, I still recommended a good slew of them out because I realized those were not specific to me as a reader. But I was like, oh, you like this? You would love this. That's just what you do. And working in a library, we're often like, I remember when 50 Shades came out and they're like, you need to ban the book. And I'm like, well, this is tame compared to some of the other books I've read, but okay. Just don't read it. That's my response. Just don't read it. You are highly entitled to not read a book. You don't have to read the book. You don't have to take it off the shelves because you just don't have to read it. And if you don't want your child to read it, talk to them.
Right. Have that conversation.
Like,
be an actual caregiver.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. I'm proud of these kids though, because I see them in the board meetings, the school board meetings, and they are fighting for the books. They want the diversity. They want to be able to read it. And it just boils down to these grownups not trusting their children enough to consume that content. And like someone Someone said somewhere on TikTok that they've done nothing but consume straight literature and straight media, and they still turned out gay.
Yeah.
It absolutely changed nothing. They always knew they were gay, and the fact remains that they are still gay.
Yeah.
You did your very best. And I don't see why having a more diverse selection, a more inclusive selection, a more just a variety of books for anybody to read.
Yeah.
I don't see why that's a problem, because we don't ban some of the books that I wish we would, but we just don't. Like, that's not my job to ban a
Yeah.
book, regardless of the book.
Some of these excuses are so porous
Mm-hmm.
and they make no damn sense.
Yeah.
Like, there are people who are like, well, I don't want this book because it doesn't align with my views. And I want to be like, well, as a Jewish person, I don't want a single book about Christ if that's the way we're going to play it. I mean, that's not true. I don't actually care. But
Yeah.
if that's the way that we're going to go, that like, I don't want books because they don't align with my views, then like, I don't want any religious books
Yeah.
on the shelves because they don't
so-
align with my views.
I love a good vampire romance. So am I going to ask you to ban all the ones that have lichens in it? Like, how stupid does you realize how stupid that is, right? Like, that's real dumb.
It
I don't
is.
necessarily read Westerns, but should they not be on
Right.
the shelf because I don't read them? Like, no, you dummy.
No.
Like, someone out there reads them. Someone loves them.
Mhm.
Shut up. Just don't read the book. Have the
Right.
conversation with your kid. Be a grown up.
Yeah, be the responsible adult you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I have a list going of books and TV shows and movies that I want to have discussions with Aurora about, because I feel like they're going to bring about some really good discussions. And I read them, and I know they gave me really big feelings after I read them. And so I want to be able to have those conversations with her, because you do feel big feelings as a teenager. You really do. Man, your hormones are just all over the place. It's a sad time.
I read somewhere that that's why we remember the music of our teens so much more fondly, because our brain is in such emotional chaos that it like
Yeah.
cements it in those
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. So it's sad that the world is choosing to fixate on banning books and some of the things that they're trying to do at the schools. And it's just really unfortunate, because you're not doing the best for your children. You're avoiding the issue by creating another issue, and that's
Yeah.
not the best.
Well, and it makes me wonder, like, how small-minded can you be that you genuinely think that your views are the only ones that should be taught? That's what private schools are for.
Yep.
And if you don't have the finances to go to a private school, you don't get to have the opinion in the public school.
Yep.
In fact, in my temple, in my Sunday school, I think it was at Beth Yeshurun, what's the book? Somebody Has Two Mommies?
Oh, yeah.
That book was on the shelves, and it was not a big deal. In fact, when I first discovered it on the shelf, I pulled it off and I was like, two mommies. And my teacher was like, yeah, you know, like sometimes there's like two mommies, sometimes there's one mommy, like your house. And I was like, oh, it's
Yeah.
like the teacher put it within a frame that I could understand without shaming me from being a single family household
Yeah.
or single mom household.
Yeah.
It was just like,
It's just, I don't know.
also, like, that's not the way that you protect children, by the way. You do not protect children by keeping them from ideas.
Yeah.
That's not how you protect children. You protect children from the people who want to keep information from them. Because without information, we can't protect ourselves. Without context, we can't protect ourselves.
Yep.
And withholding that information without that context, that's how predators find us. Because if you grow up thinking, respect authorities, respect your elders, and then those authorities and those elders prey upon you, and you don't have the language to tell people they hurt me, that's what they want.
Yeah. It's really heartbreaking as someone who is education adjacent, if you will. We have the books. The children love books. Listen, there's one author, her name is Colleen Hoover, and Book
She is
Talk.
blown up out of nowhere.
Some of those books are old, okay? And like, you cannot request one of her books and have it come in within the next week, because she's got lists, hold lists, request lists out the ass.
Girl, I was shocked when I saw it on Book Talk, because I was like, you mean the books that we couldn't wait to get rid of at half price?
Yeah.
Like, for real?
Yeah.
The books that we sold by the yard because we had so many of them?
Yes.
All right, cool. I'm proud. Like, dude. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
I remember my sister was like, you got to read this author. Her name is Colleen Hoover, and I love her. And I was like, oh, I think I've seen her books. like, okay. And then I read one, I was like, oh yeah, it's decent, it's good. And then like every now and again I check when I need a nice beachy read, I like pick up one of her books and I'm like, there's just no way I'm number 125, like I am not getting this book.
It's wild.
It's crazy because if adults are getting into reading again thanks to TikTok, why are we stopping the children from reading again? What is that about?
Because the people that want to prey upon children tell the people who are NPCs that they should protect their children. What is it? The wolf in sheep's clothing?
Yeah.
It breaks my heart. Girl, we got a book on the reconsideration committee and I volunteer every single time because I genuinely want to know how to confront these issues in the future and know how to talk about it. And I have not even started my reconsideration on this because I went in thinking, oh, I know what the problem is going to be. I read the complaint and I genuinely don't know if I can write my response to this one because it is so far off into space, cuckoo bananas, that I can't see a world where I write a response to this person that won't get me fired. Every other response you've written has been backed by research, by articles.
Yeah.
You have to do that with this one. And then I think about their complaint and I'm like, but there's no way. No way.
I remember after 9/11, people used to come in and they wanted to ban the Quran and they would report the Quran. I'm like, okay, if we ban the Quran, should we ban the Bible? No. Okay, I'll report this to the manager. Like, just dry as ever. Like, okay.
The very first like bookstore job I had was in 2005 when I graduated, and not that long after 9/11, and definitely still within the height of really serious profiling. One of the first things my trainer pointed out was that immediately after 9/11, they moved all the Quran to the top shelf in respect of its position to be as far away from the floor as possible because it's disrespectful to have it by the floor.
Wow.
That's the place that I want to be. This is where I want to be. That a group of people saw the hatred out there and we're like, all right, bet, hold my beer. I'm gonna show you how it's really done.
Yes. I was so grateful to work in a space where when in the outside world I was being looked at as a terrorist, but in the library I was safe. I remember my boss, the previous branch manager, and the circ manager who's still there, like, if you feel uncomfortable, you just walk to the back and we'll take care of it. They were always so kind because it only had to happen once that a customer did not want me to wait on them, where they recognized it and they wanted to fix the issue. So I was so grateful to be in a place where I'm not even Kevin Bacon related to the terrorists. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so far separated from him. Like, I'm probably closer to Ted Cruz because he's Canadian than I am to anything else. So just to know that they were so wise and just gatekeepers of keeping me safe was so respectful. And that's what the libraries are. Like, we keep the books, we save the books for everybody, not for just one person, everybody.
So I just want to say that, like, it may not feel like this was an episode about boundaries and horror, but it was, especially if you consider, I guess, the last boundary episode we did, which was like true crime, true horror. And I just really kind of wanted to talk about how censorship and banning books and the restriction of literacy in early childhood especially leads to futures that are just horrific landscapes that I want nothing to do with.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is true horror. It really is. It's true horror. It's very relevant to horror because horror has no boundaries.
Right.
Because they touch on everything. So yeah, no, this is just blah. That's all I can say about it. Just very unintelligible is what it is. So, thanks for listening to us rant.
Yes, thank you guys. Also, if I offended you, please like let me know how, but also I don't care. I'm not sorry. We all have opinions and I realize some of mine may be problematic, but I don't argue with NPCs. So
yeah, I tried not to offend people, but I'm pretty sure that I did with this one. Sorry, I guess. No, I don't think I am because we need to keep the books and that's all that there is to it. They helped me. They're helping countless other folks. We need to keep books. Sorry.
And with that, we got to go. Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryontheleft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryontheleft.com.